Yo, what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN. Today, I thought we'd switch some things up, and I want to take us back, like a Cadillac, just a little bit, to Home Kingdom, to Season 1. And this video is going to serve as a kind of universal guide and kind of do's and don'ts, general tips that if you've never played a Kingdom Builder before, if you've never played Call of Dragons before, you will notice that something like a home kingdom, a home server, depending on what they may refer to it as in COD, i.e. also Season 1, what do you do there? What's the purpose? What's the objective as an individual, as a group of players, as alliance or alliances, and as a kingdom as a whole? That's what we're going to be covering today. And as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up because it helps out a lot. And I hope that, especially for those individuals out there, you'll get a nice crash course into a realistic expectation or set of expectations before you potentially dive into any kingdom builder. So that way you don't necessarily walk away with, again, the opposite, which is unrealistic expectations when certain things may arise. And even though we're not going to cover everything, I'll do my best to try to cover as much as possible. So the very first question we need to ask is, what is Home Kingdom and what is its purpose? So Home Kingdom essentially serves as a base of operations for everyone that loads into the game and starts either a new account, which usually will get populated into the newest kingdom or the most recent kingdom in the game. So in this case, it would be, as of now, 624. So anyone that downloads the game and loads up will get populated here. Anyone who makes a brand new account or restarts, which could mean that someone who's already been playing for however long decides they want to remake an account and they end up here. It could be projects that start off in a home kingdom, which is very important to understand because it's not always just going to be a random assortment of individual players that will get loaded here. Oftentimes, especially like in games such as Rise of Kingdoms and some others, even Infinity Kingdom when I was playing, Rock obviously has this a lot more because they've been around for a little bit longer. Jump groups and projects are pretty prominent to a point where almost every kingdom, or even every other kingdom, probably has a good chance that there is a project going there. And what is a project? Well, it could be anything from one single full alliance of players, maybe 50, 60, 70 players that are already preparing to make accounts there in an organized fashion. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 alliances worth of players, and then just multiply those, and they're going in there. Just to give you a set of what you may experience when you load into the game for the first time. Now, once you get there, and this being your base of operations, well, what's the whole plan? What are you supposed to do? Well, the way that the game will position themselves is that they will say, well, oh, this is a war game. The objective is to advance from one zone to the next, right? Where you're starting on your outer zone 3s. And I guess it's probably easier for me to maybe kind of show this one is you're starting on your outer zone 1s. I said outer zone 3s. I know numbers are hard today. So your outer zone 1s, and then eventually you're going to move to your zone 2s, right? Or I should say here, right? 1, 2, 3. And then eventually you move to the middle. Right, so in this case on the map, it's your outer zone 1s for Home Kingdom. And then eventually Agoru, Lorcan, and Hollandale are your zone 2s, with Atherin being your zone 3. And so the objective is to move from one zone to another to get to the final zone, capturing behemoths and objectives along the way, advancing your alliance territory, attacking passes, and eventually working your way to the final zone, or i.e. zone 3, and then trying to capture the Flame Dragon. However, you may notice that along the way, there could be obstacles, there could be hurdles. You may have to fight other alliances. You may fight other players. Your units might get attacked in the open field. Any number of things could happen. You could have joined forces with other alliances. You could have multiple factions, multiple teams. It could be 1 versus everyone, 2 versus 2 versus 2. It could be 5v5. Anything you can think of could possibly happen. Now, let's get to what some of the kind of standard things are that we usually see happen in kingdom builders, especially for Home Kingdom. So there are always going to be some consistencies, trends, if you will, common denominators. This will most likely be the case where you are typically going to see some kind of ladder hierarchy effect of kind of an unbalance of alliances. So when you start out, you will most likely notice within the first 24 hours that there will be, again, like with anything, one alliance that probably will separate themselves, right? Or at least be number one. And typically within the first day or two, you may start to see some early separation, just depending on how populated the kingdom is, how, I don't know if you want to say how well or good of a job, but just how much of an effort is being made to try and either consolidate or bring top players, i.e., maybe some spenders, maybe top spenders, into a single alliance, or people just trying to herd the cattle based on what is available to them. And sometimes it can even end up where multiple alliances are at top, and then eventually they're kind of vying for, all the fresh meat there on the market. And they're trying to get these people and recruit them into their alliances. Now, more often than not, you will usually see at some point, whether it's within the first 24 hours, the first 2 or 3 days, typically it usually happens pretty early where you will start to see some breakout alliances that are there. Some alliances that are consolidating, or trying to at least, as much of the top and strongest players in that kingdom into a single alliance. This is pretty standard. This is also factors into what you heard me say before, which is that ladder climbing effect, where you're going to have some players that will essentially just look at the leaderboards, right? Like, here's a really good example. So I'm in 116. Let me do this, right? So I have a character basically in every single kingdom. So let me go to 623. I think the most newest kingdom is 624, right? So I just haven't made one there yet, but just kind of giving you guys an idea. I'm sure for anyone who's watched this for the first time, it's like, damn, that's a lot of accounts. It is. But again, I have a character in every kingdom because I like to research, I like to study, I like to educate myself, I like to pull data. These are things that interest me. And so if I go here, right, now obviously I can't see the power rankings, right? But one of the things I can do is look at something like Alliance Towers. Now, typically, you can also argue Alliance Towers usually will have, on average, a correlation to power and strength. It doesn't mean that every single position will be accurate or indicative of that, but more often than not, especially early on, it is. So, right, you have an alliance there that's like 54 million. We got one that's 27. Oh, sorry, that's 14. This one's 21, right? So you can already see a trend, right? Again, this is very standard, right? You might see some variance here and there, but typically they'll all be a little bit lower, and you can see, right? So it's kind of going top down in that order. Now, again, notice the difference, and this is just one example, right? But I can guarantee you this is pretty consistent across the board. So look at the number one strongest alliance at the moment, right? They have 13 flags here. They're 54 million power. Then look at number two. They're 27 million power, right? So number one is almost double number two. Now, again, this usually happens at the start, but can very much happen days in as well. And then this, aside from that, you can also find things like merges that will happen that can kind of change some balances here and there. But that's probably a topic for another video. So as we progress and we figure out, okay, well, the objective of a kingdom is to advance in zones, eventually make it to the final zone, capture the dragon. Okay, well, how do the players impact that? What role do they play? What's their benefit? Now, let me kind of give you a high picture so then we can go low picture because it'll make a lot more sense this way. Once you get to a point in a kingdom's lifespan where a powerhouse or a majority control has been established, whether that's with one alliance or multiple alliances, eventually you're going to get to a point where the king or queen or some alliance, someone is going to be crowned king or king, whether it's going to be a faction of two or more alliances or a single alliance. They will essentially be the stewards of that kingdom, regardless if they want it or not. That is the responsibility you will have. And some of you are wondering, like, damn, I thought I'm just playing a game and it's just a war game. Oh, no. You are playing, basically imagine you're playing Sims. You're playing like World of Warcraft, right? You're playing some kind of like resource person management game, right? It's like you're playing the Sim City, right? In an extent, or like, Roller Coaster Tycoon. You are almost kind of managing a business is one way to look at it as well. Might not be the most fun way of looking at it, but it is darn well the truth. Because once you become a king or queen in a kingdom, once you become the top alliance, you are then by default, again, whether you want it or not, you are responsible. You are accountable for every single player in your kingdom. Again, even if you don't care about anyone else, you are still responsible for them. Why? Because once you become a king or queen, You then have the tools, and maybe not all the tools, but you have some tools, we'll say, right? Because again, I have my own reservations about more opportunities I'd love for them to add in for more Kingdom and Alliance management stuff. But again, I'll save that tangent for another video. Because you become king or queen, you will start getting people that will ask you questions. People will reach out to you. People you've probably never heard from before. It doesn't mean you're going to get a lot. You might just get a little bit. It just depends on the popularity, or I should say, it depends on the activity and the population volume of your kingdom. It also depends on how much is going on in your kingdom. Most of the time, alliances, whoever becomes king or queen of a kingdom, usually is not thinking about kingdom-wide actions, kingdom-wide conversations, due diligence. They're not thinking about like kingdom-wide care, right? That TLC. Most of the time, when alliances kind of make their way to get to a point where they capture king or queen, it's, oh, well, we did it, right? It's our alliance. It's our people. And in most cases, probably more so than I probably would like to admit, sadly, you're not usually seeing a kingdom-wide approach when alliances get into the game. And part of that is because that's not the way that the game is being marketed. It's not the way that the game is telling you how to play. However, these are very real and very important things you need to know. Which again, I understand for some people, they're like, well, boss, is it really? It is that. I can tell you without a doubt. From someone who has played multiple kingdom builders, I've ran multiple projects, I speak to kings and queens on a regular basis. These are things that I've taken the liberty to educate myself on. Why? Because I enjoy it. I love it. I bask in it. These things, part of what I love about learning about the game is that, number one, not every kingdom is going to start the same way. Not every kingdom is going to end up the same way. Not every kingdom is going to be managed the same way. And these are all important factors to take into consideration. However, let's dive further. How does this affect you, again, the player? Well, the reason why it's important to understand these things is because if you as a player go into a kingdom, and let's just say you're brand new, you probably have zero expectations. You're just going to go in and play and then come what may with your experience in that kingdom. However, for people that have played kingdom builders before, you may have certain identifiers that you look out for, that you know, I need to pay attention to this because I need to see, it could be anything from, how is the top alliance acting in world chat? Are there cases that are popping up of them attacking players? Of when SLE comes around and it's the kill event period, is everyone just getting attacked and there's no order? It's just all chaos. Are alliances tearing through each other and there's just civil war happening in the zones all the time? Are people's territories being constantly cut off? Is it just feeling kind of like it's a free-for-all, right? It's kind of like, oh, everyone for themselves. Is someone trying and attempting to take that role, to take that lead position of instilling some kind of order to the chaos? Are they doing a good job? Are they not doing a good job? These are things, and again, just to kind of highlight some, right? Are there rogues running rampant? These are things that are important to look out for because there are a number of telltale signs, and maybe that's a good idea for another video in the future, which is to talk about like red flags on like kingdoms that you just need to stay away from and leave immediately, or start already collecting passports to migrate out, or if you're in a position to not continue there, immediately stop playing and then go somewhere else because the likelihood is just that it's going to end up this way rather than this other way. And or even if it's just saying like, look, these are identifiers on kingdoms you may want to play in versus ones other people may want to play in, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that one kingdom is bad and one kingdom is great. It just depends on what you as an individual are looking for. That's probably a better way to really put it. So anyways, we get to this point of you as an individual and being able to look out for these things. Now, as you are progressing and you're playing out in the zones, you will notice that some alliances may want to work with each other. Some might do temporary pacts. They may partner up. Again, as I mentioned, if you have projects that come in, that could be something that impacts how the kingdom as a whole. I've seen situations where a project comes into a kingdom and the kingdom bands together against the project. I've had that happen, I think, once or twice. Even if you have no ill intent, going in. And obviously some projects do, right? Obviously varied ill intent. And those are things that can happen. So now let's talk about, okay, big picture for the kingdom. My view, like what's the objective, right? What are you trying to get to by the end of the season, right? And again, I've kind of gone over some things that you could expect as a player, as alliance, as a kingdom as a whole. But what are you trying to get to at the end of the season? Well, the end of the season, really, if you just want to boil it down, and this is really important, regardless if you're a free to play, if you're a low, mid, high spend, if this is your first kingdom builder, if you've played multiple, the objective at the end of the day is to have the highest amount of activity possible, the lowest amount of player retention, or I guess it's high player retention, low player drop off. I have to get those right. Low player drop off, or attrition, I should say, right? If I want to use a fancier word. So low drop off / attrition, high player activity retention, trying to get as much engagement as you possibly can in order to prepare your kingdom for KVK. Now you might be asking, well, boss, what is KVK? Well, KVK, in short, is where it's multiple kingdoms that get put onto a new map, and you all just fight against each other, right? Essentially. Now, it doesn't mean you're all going to fight right away. You may take a little while to advance in zones, etc. But you'll see in this example for Season 2, this is kind of where you'll be at, is you'll see your positions here. Now, sure, they may change depending on your kingdom number and where you may be placed, but you'll notice that you will eventually fight other kingdoms, right? With the opportunity of fighting all the kingdoms in the final zone. And so you kind of have to think about your home kingdom as truly your home, your team, your family, your community. And these are some of the things that sadly the game does not do. And I have never, and I want to point out, it's not just COD, right? It's not like I'm just, hating on them or anything, because that, again, it's not that I hate on anyone, but it's to say that I have never seen a kingdom builder do a great job at any level, right? I would probably rate every kingdom builder that I have played myself personally for how good of a job do they do at really hammering this point home in Season 1 at probably like a 1 out of 10. I would give every kingdom builder I've played that. And the reason why is because none of the kingdom builders I've played, which has been quite a few, have ever done anything to advocate and to have this be front of mind to everyone who's getting into that kingdom that, hey, the objective really at the end of the day is to build something successful that you're going to be able to carry on for a long time. And the way that you do that, again, it goes back to like these simple foundations, which is keep as many players active in the kingdom, keep attrition low, / player drop off, and try to have as many players carry over with you for as long as possible, because it just helps you out as you continue with the seasons. Eventually, you'll do things like recruiting and have people migrating in and people will leave, right? These are all kind of standard things. But it's less work you have to do to an extent if you're able to keep a high level of activity, engagement, and contribution from the onset. On top of which, I can guarantee you, if more people took such an approach for kingdom builders within Season 1, we would also see a lot healthier kingdoms. Now, please don't get me started on the amount of players that get populated into new kingdoms, because I personally think it feels like it's abhorrently low, but maybe more on that for another video. And so with all of that said, right, you get to this point of, okay, well, now let's talk about maybe a big ticket item, an elephant in the room for home kingdom. Okay, boss, well, what about fighting? What about civil wars? What about things like KVK prep? Well, the challenge here, and this is once again something else that sadly happens, is you will have people that will spend money. And part of the appeal of spending money in Kingdom Builders is you just being able to get ahead, you being able to access higher tier troops, being able to, at sometimes, depending on the spender, go around and bully others. And sometimes, I don't want to say more often than not, I'll just say sometimes, you can have these situations get a little bit out of control. Now, to the person who's spending, or to that alliance or group of people that are fighting, it may not seem like that to them. It may just seem like, oh, this is normal business. All right, this is normal fun and enjoyment. This is how they are enjoying the game. But the challenge often arises where, again, playing with less people in a kingdom versus more people only hurts you later down the road. Now, again, some players, some alliances, some groups just may not care because they just may think, well, okay, we're just going to run this kingdom and then we'll just work it in by recruiting people and getting more people in through migration recruitment. Then it doesn't really matter who stays. I mean, sure, that is one approach to it. I personally like to believe that having a higher level of inclusion and a wider net of inclusion is a more net positive and longer term benefit than having a little bit more of an aggressive approach. And of course, you'll find things that are in between as well. I'm just kind of explaining maybe two polar opposites here. And so what I've seen happen is you'll have people that will just spend money, and sometimes they'll just kind of do like the mine approach, where it's, okay, well, we're spending, we want to go and fight, we want to use the money that we're investing in the home kingdom. And there's just this sad like disconnect, it feels like, or I don't know if I want to say, well, it is sad to say, but I don't mean that in like a bad or a negative way. I just mean it's more of in a unfortunate way, because the people who are spending, like I'll tell you right now, anyone who spends money in home kingdom and you just go out there and fight to your heart's content, like it sucks to see, man, because I just feel like, man, you have missed the entire purpose of what the home kingdom is, of the benefit that you really can get. Because home kingdom, I mean, that's like fighting in your backyard. That's like fighting in your backyard when you're about to go, when you have like a tournament that comes up in like a month. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying like training and sparring. I'm saying like that's like your competitors coming over and everyone is brawling it out in the backyard, and you're just like hurting yourself. It's just like a free for all, right? It's like any practice or anything, and all you're doing is like just potentially hurting your prep going up to the tournament. That's probably maybe a longer explanation, but an example. But the idea being is that when you're in a home kingdom, the point really is to bolster your forces, right? It's to bring hopefully as much activity, try to get players as strong as they possibly can, as many troops trained as possibly as they can, so you can have as many people contributing in that KVK as possible, because that's really where the action will be. That's really where people that are your spenders will really be able to cut loose. And so I'm just never going to be of this belief that people who spend money are going to all of a sudden get like some amazing value out of, fighting, like having what I would argue is unorganized fighting in PvP, to be very specific, within a home kingdom, right? That doesn't have any clear direction or educational moment or growth opportunity from that, right? I very much believe that it's about a rising tide lifts all boats. And I would rather take time to inform and educate and allow for everyone in the kingdom to gain knowledge and to feel comfortable and confident in fighting and engaging in PvP, so that way I get more out of it, right? I have a better and stronger community because of it. Now, there's obviously a big difference here between unorganized and organized PvP. Nothing wrong with organized PvP. The challenge sometimes is that people who spend, because most of the time it's usually going to be people, and that's why I'm saying that, right? It's usually on average, the people that are spending money are typically going to have the highest percentage chance of going out there and fighting in some kind of an unorganized way. And part of it is because some of them just have never played Kingdom Builders before. It's like, this is all they know. This is what they think, or this is what they've been told. I'm here to tell you that couldn't be farther from the truth. Right. I personally think it's better to have organized PvP because you get more out of it, especially if you're going in there with the intent of learning and actually having some growth takeaway from it. And you're not just like throwing money at what you think is a potential problem, or trying just to be like, oh, well, I have better stats than you, so I don't really have to think. I don't have to do anything. All I need to do is swipe my credit card and then throw my troops out and I win. I mean, sure, that might be gratifying in the short term, but I just can't really feel like it's going to be too gratifying in the long term. I mean, I've seen situations, and I'll just say this is my last thing because I wasn't anticipating for this video to be that long, but I remember this quote from Guns, who's, again, a fellow CC creator, a friend, and I remember he said this thing during a live stream where he said that some of the spenders in the alliance that he was in, and I think this was Noor at the time, because I did a video and I quoted what he said because I thought it was such a great point, is that some of the people that were spending, and others have said this as well, but this is probably one of the more prominent ones in the game's lifespan, is that some of the spenders, like these mid-high spenders, eventually came across when they fought in a KVK, right? Multiple seasons into the game at this point, when they finally came up against what would be, a worthy opponent, or let's just say a worthy opponent to them, but they were able to keep pace with them to a point where the amount that those people had spent, and I'm not saying all of them, I'm saying some of these spenders, to where the amount that some of these spenders had spent on the game, it just wasn't enjoyable for them anymore. Because the way that he had worded it is that some spenders just want to punch down, right? They just want to bully. And I'm not saying bully like, oh my God, you're the worst person in the world, but bully in the sense of like, they just like having an advantage at almost all times. And the moment that advantage is lost, and now we have to start using a little bit more intellect, a little bit more skill, a little bit more tactics, a little bit more preparation, a little bit more strategy. Now maybe it becomes more of a working effort for them right at that point, compared to more of a passive effort because of having statistical advantages and numbers advantages and troop advantages, etc. And so I just always found that to kind of be an interesting correlation. So anyways, with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This to me is, I think Home Kingdom is one of the most important areas of a kingdom builder. And there's so much that isn't really out there. And I know I was probably a little bit over the place, but I hope at least if anyone is watching this, you at least can connect with one of the things that I've said, regardless if you agree with everything or you disagree with everything. Hopefully you can at least take away one thing that corresponds to a situation you've been in, or even if you just never played a kingdom builder before, you can understand what I'm saying and it can kind of make sense, hopefully, to some degree. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I also would love to know, what is something, whether it's a point that I made and a specific situation that played out for you, that resonated with you. Let me know your story. Or if there's something I didn't touch on that you also think is a major part of Home Kingdom that you would want to bring light to, let me know in the comments below. That's going to be it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.